Okay, welcome. Good evening, and welcome to Obtuse's Monastery. Welcome to what may be some of my final streams and content. I'm time traveling at this moment to tell you. Me at this moment doesn't know if it is or if it isn't, but it may be some of the final content that I make before this save file is reset. Let's see here, let's get a game going. So, Obtuse's Monastery, what does this mean? Welcome to the place I come to meditate. What's meditation? I'm going to answer that question, but I just simply wanted to pose the question first. I'll answer it later. Endocarditis is an infection it is like liquid around your heart or something. It's an infection causing this heart problem. So I'm currently undergoing treatments for the infection at present, which may or may not be successful. The resulting heart problems, which will come forth if it's not successful enough, are of varying degrees of lethality. So at this point, we're in alert level 1. Like my alert levels when I decide whether to run away in the Diablo map. That's the alert level we're in right now. Before the save files reset. But this is my monastery. This is where I come to meditate. To describe meditation, we have to describe the fact that it's an activity which has no necessary purpose. It's an activity that's taking place as a complete expression of liberation. So my monastery is where I come to meditate and to offer sanctuary to anybody, any seeker who needs liberation, who has the desire to come meditate. You come to the monastery and you are welcome here to do that. I realized something before I realized the term meditation. Over the past 2 years, which is, and I realized this about meditation before I realized what meditation even is. You can do meditation without understanding what it is, certainly. Because meditation is play. Meditation is literally and precisely activity, which is excellent, which expresses creative consciousness, happening for its own sake, not for some other purpose or motive, for some reason that it has to happen. So I've been meditating off stream on this character primarily, doing just doing the death breath gathering rifting, the standard Nephilim rift. I just happened to finally receive this fucking frenzy weapon. We're gonna drop it in the cube right now so I can add it to the build. God damn it. Okay. Let's drop that shit in the cube. We like, that superpowers this build. Why? Because Frenzy hits an additional time per stack. So it's now going to hit 10 times when charged up. You understand what that means? I'm not even 100% fully sure of what that means. Object we're still missing to finish this build, how it's supposed to run, is the first item I got the last time I ran through hardcore. And I thought maybe running on story mode would somehow give me a better chance of getting that, so that's what I'm going to be doing today while I talk about everything that I want to talk about today. Forgot to actually select the new weapon. So Bastion's revered. When I first played Diablo in this form, the first time I picked it up with the expansion, this is the build I wanted. I wanted to get this item and the belt, and I used this little function to get this item, and it took just about as long. It was difficult to get it the first time I went looking for it. But the problem was this set didn't exist yet, so we couldn't really play this build. But they finally finished that part of the game, I would say. They completed it. Because obviously the idea is already here, because here's these weapons that benefit Frenzy. But there was no fucking set to let you use the Frenzy ability as your main attack. I have 2 copies of the collection page open. Okay, got the stream manager pulled up. Something's playing sound. Oh. Okay, it's my highlighter tab. Okay, so meditation, you don't know what it is, yet you're doing it. Well, that's because what meditation is play. It's games. It's an activity taking place in its own joy, basically. Oh, we also got this Captain Crib. The transmute failed because there was absolutely nothing in there. A third girdle of giants. Yes, of course, a third girdle of giants. So you can meditate when you don't even know what it is, because you don't have to know what it is to do it. It's basically what kids do automatically because they already are in the creative consciousness, the theta state that programs you, that lets you get programming. So of course I've been meditating for my whole life without knowing that I was meditating or how to do it. I didn't have to know how to do it, just like how you beat your heart and shine the sun, as Alan Watts fucking says about this. You don't have to know how to do it. You don't have to know what it is. You don't have to know a fucking thing about it in order to do it. You just do it. So I got this monastery, which is where I come to meditate, and I invite everyone to come here for peace, for meditation. The whole fucking thing about it is this. Like, it's a surrender to the life energy, the love energy that you are. To do this, to access meditation, is to set down the weight of worrying, of fear, of panic, and ultimately set down the dread of your finite mortality, your existence. So you set that down, and you enter this eternal now, this space, this place where that mortality, that finiteness is transcended. But the actual definition is that you're just having fun. You're just experiencing the eternal sensation of excellence, of joy. So ultimately, I was already doing this from age of 6. But I finally arrived at the knowledge of what creative consciousness is now, 30 years later. So that I can instruct you. So I can instruct myself. I can create the instructions of what I am making. So here's the great big fucking thing about what the monastery means. I'm going to do one rift now that the build is charged up. But let's continue trying to roll the belt first. We'll spend a few more rolls. So my entire life I've been meditating without knowing that's what I was doing. I've been basically an auto-meditator to piss off all the authorities and people wanting me to make something out of myself for my whole life and me not doing it. I've been pissing them off a lot, automatically, without even realizing that's what I was doing. Because another fucking Immortal Kings. But because I possess the creative consciousness is basically the reason why. That's the ultimate reason why. But also, because if I am denied this ability, if I am suppressed, I automatically resist it. I automatically refuse infringement. Yes! The 7th one, the final fucking resources I gathered today. When I was suppressed and when meditation was denied from me as a kid, it drove me fucking nuts. I was a savagely wild kid. Could not be contained. Couldn't be kept from the expression of me. It just could not be done. I was unable to be influenced by the institutions of putting kids in a jail-like environment, to be forced to sit at the desk and rampage, because I'm not really that worried. We're not planning to take on some huge challenge here, but you just never know what kind of shit's gonna spawn to ruin your life when you play this way. And this is much more meditational to play this way. To put your character's save file on the line engages you into the meditation of this. So I get the chance sometimes to say this when I get into conversations with people in /1 in the general here on Diablo, as I wrote it today. Greetings. Diablo 3 is my monastery. It's where I come to meditate. So my whole life I've been auto-meditating without permission, because I didn't fucking need permission. You have to define my creative consciousness personality as someone who was wild and uncageable and absolutely unable to be suppressed. Nobody could educate me, because their definition of education was to put me in a box where I wasn't being able to express the joy in my heart, the joy of nature, of existence. And so that was a problem for those who set out to get me to make something of my life or whatever the fuck. I was a problem child, okay? So here I am now, still the same problem child. I'm still just a pain in the ass to everybody. I just crit that guy for 11 million. It was million or trillion. I'll catch it next time because the numbers don't stay on the screen long enough. I wish these fucking numbers would float up into my face. Like, if these numbers are gonna do anything useful for me, they shouldn't just appear there and then disappear. They need to float forward into my face so I can absorb the fucking impact of the number. That would be the first mod I would make for this game if it was moddable. And then the second thing I would do would be to make an arena with an escalating number of witches to fight. So for a while I was like on my own case. I was like on my own bullshit in this interesting way. I was like pissed at myself for being unteachable, because I saw myself as having refused the human experience, refused human contact. And so I was like, well, that was stupid. You were stupid. You were an idiot for doing that. Because that is what I was doing. I was refusing human contact. I was refusing outside influence. But so what happened then was I kind of straddled the fence. I started trying to figure out, well, how do I not do that? Like Alan Watts says, well, how do we not do that? How do we not have this wrong conception of yourself or whatever? But the problem with that was I couldn't do it. I couldn't acquire human contact just by saying, well, obviously hiding myself from myself and everyone is not the right way to go about this. That's not getting me anywhere. So the reaction to it didn't help either, though, because... Why the hell am I running so fast? Oh, it's because Frenzy gives you a speed boost. No, that doesn't make sense. I don't... Yes, it does. I did get the belt. See, I forgot for a second that I had gotten the belt. That is why I'm running so fast, because we now have the rune that gives you speed boost per Frenzy stack. So I don't need the other speed boosts I was using. Okay, we'll just continue around this loop. So I turned back in the other direction and said, so how do I not do that? How do I not hide myself from everybody? That didn't work for me at all. The reason why it didn't work is pretty simple. It's because my creative consciousness was correct. I was already pursuing what makes me happy, what expresses the joy in my heart, and the deepest reality self that I contain, the spontaneous one that I can't boss or control, and it just is. It was already manifesting at level 10 out of 10 as a freaking 6-year-old kid that annoyed the shit out of everybody. And could it be educated? So it didn't do me any good to stop trying to hide myself and try on purpose to like go gain human contact. It was a series of disasters, basically. Beautiful disasters, which over a sequence of the life experiences that it was, something that led me to the very bottom, to the absolute worst possible self that I could be. The Me at My Worst is the title of the chapter describing this part of the process. Because what happened was, I went away, I decided to infringe me. I went away from the creative consciousness that I was born with and stopped practicing it and stopped showing it. And so I began infringing myself and hiding myself in this way, which was the actual meaning of hide yourself or be infringed. But here's the paradoxical thing that's funny, that I find hilarious. If I hadn't done that, I myself would not have been able to absorb the meaning of my own battle shout in my own monastery. My battle shout says, what we're searching for is you. What we came here to find is you. And I only figured that out because I went to the rock bottom of... So I thought I was hiding myself from the world, and yes, I was, because I wasn't doing anything creative. I was meditating, but I wasn't doing the full cycle of creative consciousness. But the only way I could figure out how to do that was I jailed myself and stopped doing the creative consciousness whatsoever. And the longer that went on, the worse of a person I became. I corroded, basically. The reason why is the gem I want to level is on the other character that I was going to play. I just did these greater rifts to benchmark this a little bit. It benchmarked insane. I absolutely destroyed that rift. So the worse I suppressed myself out of the creative consciousness, the worse I became as a person, and I basically participated in self-infringement that was also being perpetuated by others. Those I sought out to have contact with refused to see me. It was this unique combination of my own participation in a toxic paradigm, allowing me to understand the final meaning of my battle shout, that we are searching for you, trying to acquire the treasure, the loot, after all these dungeon runs and defeating every boss millions of times to finally get it. I guess we can start upgrading this one. I'm not currently using it, but I will use it now that the build is upgraded. So I went down to the very bottom of non-meditating, non-creative consciousness, and realized that I was destroying myself by doing this infringement, by not refusing the infringement, like, for example, in the abusive relationship situation I was in. It was very educational. It allowed me to observe the information about creative consciousness that I didn't have at that point. All I had was my automatic instinct up to that point. So the only way I could observe that information was, the only way I could become able to be educated was to do it to myself. I had to get there as a result of all of my own choices, which happened. I got what I wanted and it fucking kicked my ass so bad. So this is the consequence. Consequences, essentially. The consequence is this. I understood that infringing myself was the worst mistake I could make. And so my two choices were to stop. They were the same choices as an addict. I had the choice to stop and to begin actualizing my full creative consciousness, or to keep going and keep destroying myself and just completely eliminate, completely fail and not survive it, basically, is what was going to happen, because it was super, super not good. I'll be able to explain in more detail how that was, but that has to be sufficient for what I'm talking about right now. Because what I'm talking about right now is the monastery, the education of liberation, of doing what you want to do because it's the fire that burns in your heart. So it ended up, when I got to that point, that worst possible life and situation, then and only then could I understand, well then what is it that I'm looking for? What do I need? What's healthy for me? What does health mean? And I was experiencing the craziest panic attacks that I didn't know were panic attacks in that moment, ever. Like, I never really had panic attacks before because I refused to submit to infringement. So, I mean, I did have some negative experiences, but the crisis of it, the actual panic disorder, the stress disorder part of my PTSD rose forth in that. Because it was just complex PTSD. It was just your base level complex PTSD before that, before I put myself through the grinder, basically. So, but once I realized it, once I went through all those panic attacks and understood that what was happening was my stress disorder, because I was infringing myself and not expressing my real truth, I gained a realization of health, of what is the meaning of health, which throws me all the way back to when I first encountered the Krishnamurti quote saying it's not a measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Like, that was probably the first monk related and health related sentence or quote that I had encountered. I had already encountered Alan Watts, I know for a fact, at that point that I saw that. But at this point, the Watts quote that I had in my mind was just about the unity of self and other and the unity of being and non-being. It had nothing to do with my actual creative consciousness arrival point here. Because the unity of self-other and unity of being non-being is, it's the beginning one. It's step number one, awareness. It's the huge gaze in my creative consciousness structure. But the no measure of health being well adjusted to a profoundly sick society hits the conclusion point. It says, if you do not take the steps to be well, to have your well-being, your liberation, then what you are doing is deconstructing yourself. Period. There's no other way about it. So I finally learned that, only by almost destroying myself. And so I was pondering that today, doing my meditation, and how angry I was for it being withheld from me my whole life, causing me to be unwell. Although I was refusing and resisting the infringement, every unwellness, every harm that we have ever faced and experienced could have been reduced by being aware that it's fear. That it's fear we have to challenge. And face it. And understand it. And set it down because it's too fucking heavy. It's too harmful to just carry it all the time. So what I was pondering about that today, during meditating, to understand that my stress disorder literally means that I physically experience shutdowns, heaviness, like a feeling of being weak, like weak feeling, like I'm crumpled up on the ground and I feel like I can't move even though I could make myself. It's hard. A wheeze, like a situation that's not real difficulty breathing. It's just the panic state where you're wheezing. It feels the same as difficulty breathing. So it's sensation-wise identical, even though you're actually getting oxygen and you're breathing. The worst thing that would happen is you would pass out. You are getting breath in this situation, is what I concluded medically throughout the panic attacks that I experienced. So meditation is a medicine for me to remedy the stress disorder, the built-up, snowballed, panic type unwellness that balloons. It goes out of control in me if I don't have the freedom to sit and have my creative expression. So that realization is like the real final pebble at the end of this whole story that I'm trying to tell with the monastery story, with monk education. For me to say, this is a house of well-being, of expression, of truth, and of honesty, and of love, guarded by a warrior who defeats and taunts and keeps aggro from every possible infringement, so those within the house have the safety to practice the creative consciousness needed to have full HP, to have complete actualized good wellness, like the max level, the full talent tree. That's how it is a monastery. That's how it became a monastery, to be what I do here. It was to go all the way down into my trauma, to the harms I've undergone, my deaths and respawns, realize it, understand it, see myself, view the full entire thing. And then, from that point at the very bottom, one single brick at a time, climb all the way back up to the top, the edge of creative consciousness. Scaffolding, just one single scaffold at a time to get here. And say, I have now constructed a monastery to which I invite anyone and everyone to come participate in the creative consciousness that this is here. That it is to refuse Nazi harm and authoritarianism, which takes away our creativity and undervalues the peace that we actually need to have any kind of health whatsoever. I need this. So the other day I was talking about a bit of despair, how it seems like my life is over if I don't see an extension to the pandemic funding that's currently allowing me to have this peace. Because it's incredibly difficult to function the way I was functioning as a independent contractor, kind of hermit. It's very difficult to do that right now in the quarantine situation. At the beginning, I was being able to make the money I needed to live my life this way without being subject to the authority of any employers or landlords, but it got significantly more difficult to operate that way with the type of work that I do on gig platforms. And so I've become essentially to the point where my message as a monk is identical to the message of the original civil rights movement that stopped short of where it was headed to a full income floor economic liberty, which would describe commerce spiraling up from the decisions of every individual being left alone to make their own decisions without being subject to any monarchical authority. That was the original premise of this place I was born, this America country. It's really a horrible state, but I mean, the ideal that it originally came with that's what I'm expressing. I'm expressing the original ideal of refusing monarchical bullshit and saying we're entitled to make our own decisions because it's just stupid to operate in any other way than that. It's just literally foolish to think you're going to force anybody to say and do what they don't want and get somewhere productive. The only thing that's going to happen in that situation is the person you're forcing is just going to either find ways to hide it from you or find ways to get revenge on you. Those are the two things that's going to happen. I realized that before I even started pondering the first thing about liberation or creative consciousness. Because I lived inside a corporate hell. I was inside of a ridiculous situation, a multi-layers of ridiculousness. That's a hat I've never ever seen. Wizard hat. Never even seen that shit before, not once. Anyway, that's about enough of monk rambling today. That conveys what I meant to say when I said Obtuse's Monastery. Welcome to my meditation. That's what I'm trying to say. The 32 minutes of talking I just did to explain it. Now I'm going to be able to shorten that to a couple minutes or a couple sentences. That's what I'm doing in this whole process of scaffolding, is being able to convey the whole story easily. And because the main thing I'm here to do is teach this meditation and say you need to be able to express your joy or else you're not healthy, you're not well unless you get this. It's the release that you need, or you're going to build up and crunch up until you're absolutely suffering.
Explicitly, in public, this has to be a big fight. These two ways of life, these two ideologies are opposed. They say, but behind the scenes, it's all been carefully worked out. You bet it has. That this opposition has to happen. Because our economy depends on it, and their economy depends on it, and everybody knows this who's smart. But there are a lot of people who get taken in by the propaganda, and they should be taken in because that makes the thing work. It's crazy. But that's the way it goes. And everything works this way. There is, for example, when swans start to mate, they're not sure what they're supposed to do. And they begin to fight. I had a long talk about this with C.G. Jung. He lived on the edge of Lake Zurich, and he had a little summer house right on the water's edge, and there were many swans there. And I was getting up at the end of a conversation with him, and we were beginning to walk back to the main house, and I said, "Isn't it true that swans are monogamous?" And he said, "Yes, they are." I mean, Jung wasn't a sexual snob. I mean, he understood all the legitimacy of all kinds of sexual variations. But he said they've been a point of departure for our discussions. And he said it's a very funny thing that when they begin to mate, they start fighting. And they don't know what it's all about, and then suddenly the fight turns into lovemaking. So that's what I mean. Underneath opposition, there is love. Underneath duality, there's unity. That Tweedledum and Tweedledee agreed to have a battle. So, that Tweedledum and Tweedledee agreed to have a battle. So,
Well, this is the monastery, so yeah, it's still here even after I log off because I've got so many hundreds of hours of monastery meditation content there in the archive for you. So you are free to spend as long or as little as you want in the peace of the creative consciousness I'm trying to leave behind here for you guys even after I'm gone. Who knows, I might already be gone now saying this to you. And I'm time traveling from where I sit right now while I yet live into the moment later when you hear this. And I am no longer there. But guess what? This recording is here, the monastery is here, and it's inside you, it's in your hearts, and it's in my heart. And I am in your heart if I'm gone. When you come here and you listen to these words and you hear me, because I am the ghost who waits.